What if I told you that the US president or the US government is not actually in charge of what is going on in the world today? It is another entity entirely that many people don't really know much about. History is quite literally repeating itself in real time. We need to go back in time, all the way back to the very first American Revolution, because that is where our story starts, and the theme has been consistent all up until the present day. And stick around for the analysis, because you may be surprised by what you're about to hear. Now, your average public school may teach you alternative reasons for why the American Revolution happened, but just take a look at this quote from Benjamin Franklin's readings. The refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators was probably the prime cause of the revolution. Those are the words of Ben Franklin. So the American Revolution was fought to free the American people from King George III's Currency Act, because that ordered them to conduct all business using banknotes that were borrowed at interest from the Bank of England. So the Bank of England was just raking in wealth from the hard work and labour of the American people in exchange for inked paper. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a very good deal to me, does it? Following on from the completion of the American Revolution, private bankers succeeded in setting up a brand new central bank called the First Bank of the United States. And remember those two words, central bank, because I'm going to come back to them, and they are very key to the theme of this video. So this First Bank of the United States was founded in 1791, and almost at the end of its 20-year charter, the First Bank of the United States nearly ruined the nation's economy, all whilst enriching the bank's owners. As a result of that, Congress decided to refuse the renewal of the charter and signalled their intention to go back to a value-based currency where zero interest was paid to any banker at all. And that resulted in a threat from the man who was running the private central bank at the time, called Mayer Rothschild, and said either the United States will approve this new application, or they will find themselves in the middle of a very disastrous war. Lo and behold, what happened?
War were declared.
Congress still refused to renew the charter, so Mayer Rothschild went to the Bank of England and financed the War of 1812 to bring America back under colonial status or plunge them into so much debt that they will have no choice but to adopt a new private central bank. Lo and behold, the latter part of that plan worked. True enough, technically the United States won the War of 1812, but they were forced to create that brand new central bank, and they issued those currencies as loans at interest, with what was now known as the Second Bank of the United States. That is what a central bank is basically. They can issue currencies, they can issue banknotes. They are the ones who are in control of the nation's money supply. Fast forward a few years to 1832 and you get a new president, Andrew Jackson, who campaigns under the slogan, Jackson and no bank. Jackson was able to successfully block the renewal of the charter for the Second Bank of the United States. But shortly after that charter expired, there was an assassination attempt on Andrew Jackson's life. The man who made the attempt to take Andrew Jackson's life, Richard Lawrence, he explained the motive behind the attack by saying, with Jackson dead, money would be more plenty. This is history that the world won't teach you. It's history that the schools won't teach you. But this is the reality of what happened, and it's still happening to this day.
To this day!
Now, we are getting closer to the present day, but there is one more key point of history that we need to look back on, and that was President Abraham Lincoln. When the Confederacy seceded from the United States, the bankers, of course, in their natural guise, saw a rich opportunity for a harvesting of debt and offered to fund Lincoln's attempts to bring the South back into the Union at 30% interest. Lincoln then remarked that he would not go on to free the blacks and enslave the whites to the bankers, and said no, instead opting to use his own currency, greenbacks. This was a direct threat to the central bankers, and that also led to Europe ending up supporting the Confederacy, as they were under the impression that victory over Lincoln would end the greenbacks and bring the economy back to a loans-based system. Following Lincoln's assassination, the greenbacks were pulled from circulation, and the American people were forced to go back to an economy based on banknotes being borrowed from private interest bankers. Now, this is where things get very interesting and tie into what's going on in the present day today. In 1913, a third central bank was established in the United States, but due to hostility over the previous two banks, they didn't opt to call this the Third Bank of the United States. They went on to call this the Federal Reserve. Now that name gives it a more quasi-governmental image, which is what they were going for, I think, but in reality, the Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank. History that we've just covered tells us that this is a privately owned bank. In fact, in 2012, the Federal Reserve rebuffed a Freedom of Information lawsuit by Bloomberg News, stating that as a private banking corporation and no way affiliated with the US government whatsoever, the Freedom of Information Act did not apply to them. No more proof is needed to know that these guys are a private bank. So the question now becomes, how does that all tie in to what the US did yesterday by attacking Iran? Well, let's get the shocking part out of the way first. President Biden is not in charge. He's a puppet. US government is not in charge. They're puppets. The people who are in charge are the Federal Reserve. They control the money supply, they control the financial system, and they will act in accordance of what will be solely of a benefit to them. Now, I will elaborate on this point, but I want you to remember this. The US dollar currently is the world's most powerful currency. The Federal Reserve, as a private central bank, they will not give up that power easily. But let's break this down into pieces and analyze what is actually going on and why the Federal Reserve is moving the way that they are. Okay, number one. This is number one. The system is dried up. It's a liquid. It's a black hole. It's an abyss of cash. There's nothing. Well, again, remember what I said about the US dollar being the most powerful currency in the world right now? Take a look at this. If you notice this headline here, Iran becomes a member of the BRICS. BRICS are basically Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They're developing countries, if you will. Now, following on from BRICS' decision to expand their membership, Iran accepted the invitation and as of January the 1st, became an official member of the BRICS this year. Why is this so important? Well, Iran have made a very bold move by demanding that BRICS nations should use their own digital currency and ditch the US dollar. This would mean that Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and all the new members of the BRICS would no longer trade with the US dollar, essentially reducing the power the US dollar has on the world stage. And if there's one thing we've learned in the making of this video, it's that the Federal Reserve will not allow that to happen because they hate the idea of the US dollar not being the most powerful currency. OPEC, which is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, them pricing their oil barrels in dollars was a huge win for the Federal Reserve. But over the last several years, nations are now using their own currency to purchase those barrels of oil, which has led to a decrease in the number of Federal Reserve banknotes that are being printed. Hopefully now you can draw the link and understand why when I say with the very first central bank to where we are now with the Federal Reserve, history is repeating itself in real time. There is more to this than the 3 service members, God rest their souls, who were killed out in Jordan. The Federal Reserve will stop at nothing to cement their position as the world's most powerful, influential central bank. I'll be providing as many updates as possible as I can on this. It's going to be a very interesting year, especially with elections happening in both the US and the UK. So 2024 is going to be a very interesting time. Alright my people, that's enough for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Appreciate any support that I can get. Be sure to like down below, subscribe down below, comment down below. And I'll see you all in the coming weeks. It's going to be a very intriguing time, for sure. But I'll see you all soon. Take care.